Welcome to an NFL Week 5 edition of the RotoWire Sports Gambling Podcast. Hopefully you're listening to us here on YouTube, Twitter, in the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast feed. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. John, we are just rolling through this NFL season, already coming up on Week 5 as we record on Thursday afternoon. We're just a few hours away from the big one, the granddaddy of them all, Bears-Commanders on Thursday Night Football. By the time this pod is out, that game will be close to started. So we won't spend a lot of time on that one. You can find our leans on that game over on the RotoWire YouTube channel. Earlier today, we talked about what our selections might be for Week 5 in the Circa Million contest. We talked about that Thursday night game quite a bit. I'm pretty confident that we'll be staying away from it in Circa for a number of reasons. But we're finally building some momentum in Circa Million, John. 3-2 last week. We hit on Seattle. We hit on the Chargers. We hit on Dallas. We lost on the Eagles. And man, we came very, very close to hitting on the Kansas City Chiefs, but we will bounce back this week. And I really like the board. The last couple of weeks, whether we're doing pick 'em or, picking every game against the spread like we do, I didn't feel great about it. I like the setup this week a bit more.
I do too. The last 2 weeks, week 3 in particular, it's like, what am I even looking at? Week 3 is a tricky one because there's such like a sort of slingshot effect from week 1's action into week 2, and you're just kind of split on your actual opinion on all these teams because oftentimes it just looks so different from that first game of the season, especially with impact players not really playing in the preseason to week 2. So that set us up for a toughie in week 3. But we got back last week, and this week really there's only like 2 or 3 games that I cannot find a strong foothold for. But other than that, we're feeling good. I'm liking the board.
Yeah, we like the board quite a bit. And maybe part of it is we're down 4 teams this week. We do have bye week setting in week 5. It's always a jarring thing for me when you look at the board, you're like, something's missing here. What's going on? There should be 2 more games. Like we're being robbed. But it's a necessary evil of the NFL to get these bye weeks out of the way. So 4 teams will not be playing this week. I think in general, like for teams that I root for the Jags, like I don't think I would want a week 5 bye. Like I want that thing right in the middle of the season. It's interesting because, a team like the Chargers or the Browns that, Justin Herbert's fingers banged up. Deshaun Watson didn't play last week. Even the Buccaneers, like the bye comes at a pretty good time with Mike Evans tweaking his hamstring. Like I think those teams all need the bye, but in general, I think I want that later in the year because, going, week 6 through 18 without a bye, that's a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the sweet spot is, in my opinion, like weeks 8 through 10. If you feel like those are like that's most fortuitous for the teams on buys those given weeks. And I think there's also something to be said for on the other end of what we're talking about here, where like week 13 you got the Vikings and the Ravens and a handful of other teams on bye. Week 14. Commanders and Cardinals. You can tell I did a lot of best ball this summer. I still remember teams bye weeks off the top of my head. So I know what's up as far as that goes. But yeah, it feels like playing 14 consecutive weeks is really a tough draw there for those teams as well. But I think that early season bye like this week, like you said, comes at a fortuitous time. But maybe that gives Eckler some additional time to get his injury in good shape there. But yeah, if I'm a fan, not loving the week 5.
All right, let's get right to the board. We're not wasting any time this week. We got 13 games to break down. Like I said, we'll not be talking Thursday night. As we always do, John, we'll divide these up into the games that we're most looking forward to watching, the games that we might have the strongest leans on. Then we'll kind of get down and whittle things down from there. I want to start in London, and maybe not everybody is drooling over Bills-Jaguars, but obviously I'm a Jags fan, and the Jags are coming off a win. They've somewhat righted the ship. We will see. This is going to be the toughest test of the year so far for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They do have a pretty tough schedule, some tough games coming up the rest of the way. The Buffalo Bills, depending on where you look, 5.5 point favorites. Seems like it's settled at 5 at most books. We like this one quite a bit, John. We talked about it in the Circa video. I'm all over the Buffalo Bills to win this game. I know it's in London. I know the Jags have the travel advantage. I know Trey White got hurt last week. But I think a lot of things here point me in favor of Buffalo.
I'm on the same page with you here. Buffalo has definitely made me eat my words over the last 3 weeks or so after that Monday nighter against the Jets to get things started. But they seem to have really righted the ship. They really put the performance of the week down last week against Miami. And even with that travel detail baked in here, I think that that's obviously factored into the line a little bit. But Jacksonville, they just still feel like they're stuck in the mud. Travis Etienne, like the 20 carries for 55 yards. Like, how much better does that get this week against Buffalo? Buffalo's defense is better than Atlanta's, and Jacksonville still struggled pretty mightily to gain much in the way of traction last Sunday in London. So it helps that they've been there, but maybe it works against them that they've been eating full English breakfast all week. Just a lot of beans in the morning could be detrimental for the Jaguars overall. But bottom line here, I think the Bills offense is clicking, and the Jags offense is so predictable that plays into the hands of the Bills defense, even sans Trey White, so well. I think McDermott is going to have this schemed up really well. I'm expecting a tough day for the Jags offense, and therefore Bills cover.
You said it very well. Again, these international games, they always kind of throw you for a loop. You're never sure what to expect. It's such a long trip over there. To me, that's so much different than even going, like San Francisco to New York. It's just, it can mess you up. So I understand if there's some hesitation here. But in these international games, favorites 39-1 straight up. They're 26-14 ATS. Josh Allen, 45 of his 59 career straight up wins have come by at least 7 points. So when the Bills win, when they're rolling, they tend to win big. I also saw a stat, and maybe this would push us the other way, John. Josh Allen has not gone 2 straight games without a turnover in his entire career. Given how he started his career, like maybe that isn't that crazy, but that's still pretty wild to me. And he did not commit a turnover last week against the Miami Dolphins. So something to keep in our back pocket there, maybe for props.
Yeah. So if you find a Josh Allen turnover prop or an interception prop, maybe take a gander at that. That's just his style, like the Bills can still win in spite of that, to your point about their record and how many 7-point victories and beyond they have under Josh Allen. But it wouldn't surprise me if he has one of his kind of just hilarious arm punts or something here during the course of Sunday's action. I just don't really view that it's going to alter the game so much to where the Jacksonville stays within this number.
Last thing I'll say on Buffalo, I do think this is a tough matchup for the Jacksonville offense, but teams have been running on the Bills. They are dead last in the NFL yards per attempt so far.
Whoa.
We saw the Raiders pile up 183 rush yards. We saw the Commanders get to 168. The Jets only got to 97 in week 1, but that included, Breece Hall, got 95% of those on one long run. They did a good job against Miami last week. That's certainly encouraging. But, if Jacksonville has any hope to keep up with this Buffalo offense, it's going to be a heavy dose of Travis Etienne, and it's going to be Trevor Lawrence finally taking some shots downfield. It can't be one every 3 series. It's got to be more frequent. By the way, Von Miller's traveling with the Bills. He is in London and might play at this game out of nowhere.
Right. And, the Bills pass rush, last week was already looking pretty lively. Like Greg Rousseau, who they got out of Miami a couple years ago, he's looking like he's turning into a force off the edge there. You get Von Miller back. You got to imagine if he's active, he plays on a bit of a pitch count there, but he'll be full bore for the snaps that he is out there. So that's an additional level of concern there for the Jags and the offensive line, and keep Trevor upright.
Let's go to your team, John. The Baltimore Ravens. Numbers been on the move a little bit. It's up to 4.5 at DraftKings. They are on the road at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Very low total here, sitting down at 38. I think that makes sense. The Ravens caught a break last week with Deshaun Watson being ruled out. They got the Dorian Thompson-Robinson experience. Everything's gone wrong for Pittsburgh, right? This feels like, we got a few of these games right now. Like Desmond Ridder seems like he's playing for his job this week. Matt Canada feels like he's coaching for his job this week. A lot of trends would push you in favor of the underdog here, the Steelers. I just can't quite get there, John. And I know the Ravens are not a perfect team. They have flaws, and these AFC North versus AFC North games always tend to be wacky and tend to be close. But I think you're leaning the same way with the Ravens here. Like, is there a way where Pittsburgh could keep up?
I don't think so. I'm very strong on the Ravens this week, and I usually don't feel this confident going up against the Steelers, even when the Steelers don't really have an overly competitive team. Like last year, the Steelers went into Baltimore on a Sunday night and beat them. And so, that there is a little bit of that. They can jump up and get you type of thing. But I think that, Matt Canada, hot seat, like you said. I don't know if you follow Antonio Brown on Twitter still, but he's vehemently anti-Matt Canada.
Great follow, that guy. Always
he
dropping
really he is. He wants to be the OC in Pittsburgh. also wants to play for them. A little was it Wilt Chamberlain that was the player coach?
So a lot of guys wanted Bill Russell, I think, at one point.
Bill Russell, that's right. The Steelers are just, despite my ramblings, they're stuck in the mud offensively. They have a couple statistics here for you to underline that 67% of Pittsburgh's drives have resulted in a turnover or a punt. That's the second worst rate in the league. I don't think that improves too much against the Ravens, who are getting healthier right now. If Marlon Humphrey's able to go, that is going to hurt that passing attack for Pittsburgh even further. And the defense generally is just flying around right now. And also for each fresh set of downs that the Steelers get, 61% of those are getting to third down. So nothing is coming easy for the Steelers on offense. It's always in a third and distance type of situation for them. Ravens get to pin their ears back. Jadeveon Clowney's been a wrecking ball, generating pressures on the quarterback. I think this is the week he gets home a little bit against Kenny Pickett, who's, you got to question his mobility coming off the knee bone bruise. So everything sets up for the Steelers offense to be, basically impotent in this matchup. And I think the Ravens offense is really starting to find its groove here with the new system under Greg Roman. And Bateman and Beckham were both full participants in practice Thursday, so they have their full complement of weapons as well. From a fantasy angle, the Steelers, the wide receiver ones that they've faced this year, like with Brandon Ayuk and a handful of others, have all had over 100 yards, huge days for fantasy. So I think that there's appealing receiving yardage props there to be had for either Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers as well. I really like the Ravens to cover here, even though this traditionally is a very close game where the underdog often rises up.
Marlon Humphrey also back at practice this week. We saw Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Linderbaum return to action last week against Cleveland. So some of those injuries that were, I think, bogging down the Ravens offense, especially early on, starting to turn in the Ravens' favor. Underdog has covered 11 straight in this rivalry between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Dogs are 15-1-1 ATS since 2015. So there are some strong trends here, but trends have to be broken at some point, John. So I'm with you. I think we're going to lock this one in Circa. We had it at 4 there, now up to 4.5 at DraftKings. Let's talk about the game of the week. 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. This game is out in San Francisco. Numbers held pretty steady all week, John, at 3.5 in favor of the 49ers. What kind of a chance do we give Dallas here to hang around? I think talent-wise, Dallas is right there with San Francisco, not far behind. Losing Trayvon Diggs certainly hurts, but I think if you stack these rosters up right next to each other, these are two of the 3 or 4 most talented overall teams in the NFL. I tend to lean 49ers here. I just trust this team. It feels like their down weeks are better than just about every other team's down weeks. Their strong weeks, they just pulverize teams. They bowl you right over. I expect Dallas to make this a game. I don't think they roll over whatsoever. But the Niners, man, they've covered 9 straight at home. They've scored 30 plus in 9 of their last 10 games. It's looking effortless.
Yes, I think, to your point, the Cowboys are definitely a top 5, top 6 team in the league. But I'm of the opinion that the Niners are the best team in football, and by a decent little margin. We'll see what the Chiefs A game looks like later on in the season. But for right now, I don't think anybody's beating San Francisco the way that they're playing. They're at home. We've seen some concerning home road splits for Dak Prescott, and he's going to be on the road, obviously, in this spot. I don't like this setup for him. I think that defense in San Francisco is really going to be a lot for him to deal with on Sunday night. And, for the 49ers angle, they're just so balanced on offense. Like, you load up to stop McCaffrey, all of a sudden you're opening up shot plays to Ayuk and Debo and to Kittle. And if you don't load the box, then McCaffrey's just going to absolutely gash you. So you are damned if you do, damned if you don't against the 49ers. And the Cowboys obviously have an explosive pass rush and a good defense. We'll see how that secondary continues to respond, sans Trevon Diggs. But I really just wouldn't be surprised if the Niners make a big, loud statement on Sunday night and kind of roll here, actually.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Right? I could see Dallas winning this game. I could see Dallas keeping it within a field goal, and that's why the hook is so important here. But I can't see Dallas making a statement and blowing out the 49ers, right? Part of it is this game is at San Francisco, and that's a big advantage. But it's like, that to me is another reason to trust San Francisco, I guess. It's like, if that's the only side that I can see winning in blowout fashion, I just, there's just too many things have to go wrong. I feel like for San Francisco to not be competitive or not win a game. We saw last week. I mean, Deebo Samuel and George Kittle combined for 2 catches, 2 touches, I believe, in the entire game. And they roll. They roll over an Arizona team that has put up a fight against every team it's faced, including the Dallas Cowboys, beating them outright. So, neither of these teams has played an overly tough schedule. The 49ers have had a slightly more difficult schedule so far. They've actually had a couple common opponents, but I think for Dallas, like this is a huge level up in terms of the competition that they faced so far. And they've looked good for the most part. We could maybe throw that Arizona game out, whatever, they got caught off guard. But you're going from playing, 3 of the 5 worst offenses in the league so far to playing a team that might be the best offense and the best defense. Like that's a big adjustment to make if you're the Cowboys.
It's huge. And you have the McCarthy versus Shanahan factor. Give the edge to Shanahan every single time there. So, this just, I'm very excited for this. Like, as far as like, I don't have a dog in this fight, rooting interest wise, and it's a regular season game. But this could be the best game on paper that we're treated to this entire season. I'm very excited for it, but I do feel like every time I kind of run through my mental simulations, it always ends up with the 49ers getting this done and getting the cover.
Yeah, I like this imagery of your brain acting as a supercomputer. It's like, some people use these models where they simulate every game like 500,000 times. Like, no, John just kind of visualizes how it's going to go 1,000 times, and that's how we roll.
I just say, I see McCaffrey stiff arming somebody into the end zone, and like my eyes are like rolling back in my head. They're all white. It's the Oracle. I'm bending spoons with my mind.
All right, let's go to Miami and the New York Giants. Might not be a game of the week contender, but Miami's must-watch TV at this point, man. It's like watching a Big 12 team. I love it. Like that's why I was so into college football for so long. It's like the NFL. Like when I was younger, I was like, there's just not enough scoring. I want to watch a team put up 75 points, and it feels like the Dolphins are capable of doing that just about every week. Now they got humbled last week in Buffalo. That's for sure. We were all over that one. We sniffed it out. Bills defense ended up winning the day, but the Giants they're not the Bears. I think they're a slight level ahead of that, but a lot of the numbers would indicate that they are just as bad, man. I mean, this is a Giants team that is in serious trouble. We'll see if Saquon Barkley even comes back. He was limited at practice on Thursday. That is not a guarantee by any means. Their entire offensive line is banged up. Andrew Thomas is not expected to play. And they just gave up 10 sacks on a short week. They're also coming into this game having played on Monday night. Like there's just everything you look up is just pushing you and pushing you and pushing you in favor of the Miami Dolphins. The number's up to 11.5. Are we still confident with the number continuing to climb?
Right. It's a big number there, but I feel like this is one of those ones where you think it out, and if you end up landing on the Giants side of this thing, just trying to take the points and hoping, you're going to feel so foolish when the Dolphins have won this game 42-10. This is such a brutal setup for the Giants. I mean, it wasn't even a great lively pass rush that Seattle was bringing out there, and they still were just in Daniel Jones's lap the entire game. Daniel Jones was somehow able to complete almost 80% of his passes in that game. That feels like a mirage. It feels like I've been gaslit by that box score. Yeah, it's going to get a lot worse this week. I think, we talked about it earlier. Jalen Phillips coming back adds to that pass rushing depth for Miami, and I think another just kind of interesting detail, everyone wants to point to how bad the Giants offense is, but the defense has been totally toothless after being, kind of a steadying and carrying presence for them in their playoff run last season. I don't know if Wink Martindale, obviously I'm very familiar with him as the former Ravens defensive coordinator, really aggressive on the blitz, and they're not getting home whatsoever, despite, on paper having decent personnel. So I don't know what's wrong with his scheme right now. But I'm envisioning Tua having a lot of time, and he doesn't need a lot of time. So this could be a kind of a bloodbath, frankly, for the Giants.
Yeah, the Giants are near the bottom of the league in terms of pressure rate. They have 4 sacks on the year. That is more than only the Chicago Bears through 4 games. We could just read off like terrible Giants stats the entire show. They have not forced a single turnover yet on the season. It's just not good here, man. And again, playing on the short week, having to go down to Miami. It's going to be hot. You're going to be standing in the sun, as they always make the visitors do this time of year. And I think you also have a Miami team that's hungry to get back on track, right? And I think for the most part, we don't try to get into like the motivational stuff. I think that's really tough to gauge. But, Miami wanted to prove that they were the best team in that division. That certainly did not happen last week. And now they have a chance against one of the worst teams in the league, I think, to make a statement. So, I don't think the Giants are going to switch something up. I don't think they're going to allow Daniel Jones to be sacked 10 times, but it's really hard to settle on, okay, what is the move here? What is the play that gets the Giants back on track? It's a nightmare matchup. Like, if you're the Giants, this is pretty much the last team I think you would want to face based on what happened Monday night.
Yeah. I mean, this is a bottom 5 team going on the road on a short week against a fringe top 5 team. Like that's just kind of where it all starts and ends for me. But the Barkley situation even if he's there, even if he's ready to go, I don't think he'll be 100%. And I'm not sure if he can really even help because the offensive line doesn't generate any space whatsoever for with his blocking. So this is tough scene incoming for Big Blue.
Let's move on to Eagles and Rams. This game is out in LA. Rams are 4-point underdogs at home. The look ahead on this one, back in early September was Eagles by 6.5. So it's actually shrunk despite Philly getting off to a 4-0 start. But I think a lot of respect here for what the Rams have been able to do. Like I maintain that this team is overmatched, especially in the trenches, basically every week. They're undersized, they're inexperienced, they got a bunch of guys on defense that you've never heard of. And I think Sean McVay has already reminded us through the first 4 games here that he is an elite head coach and is getting the most out of these guys. I do worry about Philly, defending the middle of the field. I think that defensive backfield has not been to the level that we would expect from Philadelphia, but I can't get away from the advantage that the Eagles have with their offensive line and defensive line. I mean, this is one of the best pressuring teams, if not the best, in the NFL. I think back to 2 weeks ago against Tampa Bay when they're just opening these just cavernous holes for DeAndre Swift, and certainly Aaron Donald will have something to say about that. But outside of Aaron Donald, I think the Philadelphia offensive line against the Rams defensive line, that's the biggest advantage in this game. And I really expect Philly to roll here. I know the Rams have kind of become this somewhat of a trendy upset pick, or at least a trendy ATS upset pick, but I like Philly here.
This is where we differ a little bit.
Okay.
And
all right,
to your point, so with the Eagles, the way that I see them covering is very akin to how the Bengals got it done against the Rams on the Monday night game a couple weeks ago, where we saw Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard living in that Rams backfield. Those two are phenomenal edge rushers, but I think Philadelphia, but like sum in total, has a more vaunted front 7 as far as that is concerned. But Philadelphia does have kind of, in my opinion, a leaky or at least banged up secondary. So the Rams are going to need to play the quick game here. Like, they're going to need to get the ball out of Stafford's hands. You can't do the 5 and 7 step drops against this defense when you have that offensive line. But luckily for him, with Cooper Kupp supposedly coming back, you got Puka Nacua obviously cooking through the first month of the season. If they just play that quick game, I think that they're going to be able to take some of that pressure off of Stafford, and I think they're going to be able to sustain some drives, have some success, and keep this one close. Now the defense, that's another issue that I think is well stated as far as the Rams being candidates to get bullied a little bit by this Eagles offensive line, but I don't know. I just keep landing on the Rams. I think it is significant to me the way that the line has moved over the course of the season from 6.5, which I would have hammered the Eagles at that coming into the year. I thought the Rams were going to be vying with the Cardinals for being the worst team in football this year, and that certainly hasn't been the case. The strength is on the offense, and specifically with its passing game, and that's where Philly's weak, just weak enough to where I think the Rams do end up keeping this one close.
I think you're in the majority there. So I will respect your opinion on that. We're not going to use this game in Circa. I mean, I don't feel that strongly about it, but I think the Eagles get back on track. I think they don't like how they played last week against the Commanders, but Stafford worries me. Puka Nacua worries me. I don't think we're going to see Cooper Kupp in this game. I don't believe a decision has been officially made there, but you remain limited at practice yesterday. We don't have a full report on Thursday. Either way, I mean, when Stafford gets hot, that's like become one of the scariest things in football. Like he's made a few mistakes. He had some costly picks against Cincinnati. Had one last week as well. Like he's still always got that in his back pocket. But when he's humming, it's really something we didn't see last year. He was injured. He never really got back on track. Like I think he's just a reminder that he is a very, very dangerous quarterback when things are schemed up and he's confident. So I think the Rams can move the ball through the air. That does worry me. They're going to need some big plays here, but I trust the Eagles defense and I trust the Eagles offensive line. So we will agree to disagree on that one, John. Let's go
And
to
your Stafford point quickly. I was on the fantasy football pod with Mario Puig, our colleague, earlier, and he said eye test wise, Stafford has been like a top 3, top 5 type of quarterback this year. It hasn't totally shown up in the box score yet, but maybe that does end up correcting, because as far as like looking at how he's playing, real sharp, real vintage.
Yeah, he's been nasty. He's been really good. Chiefs-Vikings. Chiefs are 4-point favorites on the road at Minnesota. Tricky game. Like I actually think this game mirrors Eagles-Rams in a lot of ways.
Yeah, this is one where I'm basically I'm gonna take the Vikings in the points, cover my eyes, and just throw it behind me and just hope for the best here. Because betting against Patrick Mahomes is a terrifying exercise. Betting on the Vikings, similarly terrifying.
Yeah, would not recommend.
Sometimes it's fun to live dangerously, to stay on a 7, as Austin Powers once did in Las Vegas. And hey, that's what I'm feeling here with the Vikings. I think that we just still haven't seen the Chiefs offense get into full go mode. And I know the Vikings are a team where you can certainly get right, but this is in Minnesota. It's in the Dome. I think that the Vikings are going to be able to, on offense, answer a lot of the time, every time that the Chiefs score. Might even see the Vikings take an early lead here. So I like the Vikings here. It's just enough points to where I'm considering it. Obviously, if this was coming in under 4, you're strongly on the Chiefs at that point. But where the number is hanging right now, it's enough for me to just go ahead and take the points at home, seeing it at 4 over at Circa. So give me the Vikes here.
We have it locked in at 4 in Circa. It's down to 3.5 everywhere else. It's 3.5 at DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, PointsBet. That scares me a little bit. I don't know why that would be. I don't think there's a key injury that we're worried about here with Kansas City. I'm not sure if what would be going on with the Vikings to continue to move that line in their favor. I mean, offensively, Minnesota, to me, is still really dangerous, especially with the pass. It's just a matter of how many times are they going to turn the ball over. I mean, they've lost 7 fumbles. Kirk Cousins has 4 or 5 picks already on the year. Had a really costly 99-yard pick six, another pick in the second quarter against Carolina that really kept the Panthers in that game. You make those mistakes against the Chiefs, you almost have no chance. But there is still something really dangerous about this Vikings offense. I don't care what team you're going up against. I still Justin Jefferson strikes immense fear into me. So are we agreeing that this is going to be a stay away?
Agreeing that it's a stay away, and if I had to have a lean, it is on the Vikings. You oftentimes I will just total hubris move, but I will have my prior locked in for a certain game, and then I see line movement. I'm like, good that it's going away from me. I'm gonna double my unit. No, I'm not responsible. Gamble responsibly, folks. But I do tend to feel usually stronger about my opinions if the line's moving away from it. But in this case, when it comes to the Vikings, it's I was unsure about it at 4.5, but seeing it go to 3.5 now, I feel oddly even better about the Vikings in this spot, even if it's moving in their direction.
Okay. Vikings 2-8 ATS in their last 10. I will leave it at that.
Brutal.
Yeah, even better. Texans-Falcons. This isn't the sneaky fun game category for me this week. I never, ever would have circled this game 5 weeks ago and said, I need to make sure and carve out some time to watch this. But Houston, despite being a team that I'm just born to hate because they're in the AFC South, they've been a really fun watch. I think we saw week 1 against Baltimore, and you're like, all right, CJ Stroud looked okay, but other than that, the Texans look like the Texans. Since then, I mean, this has just been an offense that's taken off. CJ Stroud, is going to have a chance to set the rookie record. I forget what it even he's already set the rookie record for most pass attempts without an interception. I think he has a chance now to join elite company as far as just going this far into a season without an interception in terms of number of pass attempts to begin a year. I mean, we're almost talking about stats now where you don't even consider him as a rookie. Texans 1.5 point favorites at Atlanta. I feel like everybody's going to be on Houston, especially after last week. It felt like that was the spot where, okay, they got their win against Jacksonville, but this Pittsburgh defense, they're going to get to Stroud. This is 2 straight weeks now where you look at the Texans offensive line and, Larry Tunsil's been out. You can't name anybody else on that line. You think TJ Watt's going to have himself a day, and, they've kept him clean. And, when I was saying to you earlier on the Circa video, you go through and watch these CJ Stroud snaps, like he's not just dumping it down 3 yards. He's not making these, just kind of easy out plays that a lot of rookie quarterbacks do. Like they're having him stand in the pocket. They're having him deliver throws, and he's making them consistently. What is if you're on Atlanta here, which I don't know if you are, but if you are, what is the pitch for why the Falcons win this game?
I think it would have to come down to them controlling things, similar to what we saw maybe against the Packers or the Panthers earlier this year, where they're able to dictate what's going on offense. They're able to sustain drives thanks to the run game, occasionally get a completion out of Desmond Ridder once in a while, they hope. And, Bijan Robinson obviously running very well, over the last couple of weeks. He seems to have kind of taken the full command. Having some freakouts about my lack of Tyler Algier shares after week 1, but I'm less concerned about that now. But basically, the Falcons need to, control the clock on offense and dictate their terms that way. And I think defensively, if they're able to do something that honestly no other defense has been able to do to this point, and affect Stroud and get him to turn the ball over, that's the way that the Falcons win this. But I'm dubious on both of those, paths for the Falcons actually coming to fruition. I feel like Houston, they're cooking right now, and they have some reinforcements along that offensive line potentially on the way. Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil might be able to give it a go here. That would be huge for them. And I think it would also really help get Dameon Pierce going and make this offense a little bit more balanced, because outside of last week, they haven't really been able to get a whole lot going on the ground. So I know the Falcons can be stingy against the run, so maybe that's kind of a moot point. But bottom line here, distinct quarterback advantage for Houston, no home field advantage for Atlanta. And just give me the Texans. I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit. And we should have I wish we knew this a little bit more ahead of time last week, but if we knew that the Texans were wearing the battle reds, I think that we might have had to include them on JJ Watt Day.
Doug, I know. I'm so glad you brought that up. I thought the same thing. I saw that on Sunday morning, and I'm like, oh man, I'm on the wrong side here. I had no idea. Like, you got to be able to disclose this for the bettors. I found the stat that I was like stumbling over 5 minutes ago. Quarterbacks who've attempted 150 plus passes in the first 4 games of a season and have not thrown an interception. As far as I'm aware, this is like NFL history. Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, CJ Stroud.
Holy crap.
That's nuts. That is nuts. I have another trivia question for you here that I kind of discovered on the fly. Can you name the 3 quarterbacks this season who have started all 4 games and have not thrown a pick? CJ Stroud is one of them.
Purdy. And is it? Sorry, I won't belabor this. It's not Tua. Is it Sam Howell?
It is Joshua Dobbs, John.
Oh, I almost went there, but I didn't want to look stupid. But I picked Howell, which does make me look stupid. Good job, bud.
Oh man, Stroud, Purdy, Dobbs. 4 games, 0 interceptions. Everybody else has at least 1 pick. The other thing with Atlanta here, you're coming back from London without taking the bye, and historically that has not treated teams well. Teams that elect to do that, they tend to kind of not show up defensively. Opponent totals are 7-3 to the over when a team comes back to London and does not take a bye. And great note from the Action Network here: every one of those 10 teams that came back from Europe and played the next week, all 10 of them were tied or trailing going into the fourth quarter the following week. So there is some minor sample here to indicate that the Falcons might feel that jet lag coming back from London. So I think good time for the Texans to catch this team. I do feel like at some point that Texans offensive line is going to crumble. They just can't keep getting away with this. But I don't know that Atlanta is the team that's going to make them pay. And a lot of pressure is on Desmond Ridder this week. So I'm with you. If I have to make a pick here, I would go Texans plus 1.5 at the Atlanta Falcons. Quick message from the presenting sponsor of our podcast, Circa Resort. It's football season at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim. 3 levels, 6 pools. Count them up, 6 pools and a 143-foot diagonal screen. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. They play every game from college to the pros. You can catch all the action poolside. They have a variety of seating options, day beds, temperature-controlled cabanas, whatever you want. You can find it at Stadium Swim. It's located at Circa Resort and Casino and it is open 365 days a year. They play all sports, all seasons. Book today at circalasvegas.com. That is circalasvegas.com. Let's get back to the board, John. I want to go with another game that I don't think I would have had circled even like 2 weeks ago, but here we are. Cincinnati at Arizona. Bengals 3-point favorites on the road. Arizona, they're kind of like a junior version of the Texans to me, where you see the flashes. They haven't been quite as consistent. Josh Dobbs has looked really good. Hasn't been quite on CJ Stroud's level, but he's looked a hell of a lot better than I ever expected. Cincinnati is almost an impossible evaluation. We don't know what version of Joe Burrow and what version of this offense we're getting week to week. But as of right now, as of Thursday evening, it's not looking to me like T. Higgins is going to play. He hasn't closed the door, but even if he does play, you have to think, he could be one hit away from leaving that game.
Right. Yeah. Ribs are tricky, and that they are just a couple weeks away from their bye week in week 7. So it might be pragmatic for them to just put him on ice until week 8. I do believe that the Bengals have enough receiving depth. Tyler Boyd could step up. Charlie Jones looking like, he can be at least a little bit of an asset in the passing game as well. So that to me isn't overly concerning if they are sans Higgins, I'm a big T. Higgins guy. He's looked awful this year. He's been bad. Just no way around it. Maybe it's the contract thing. I don't know. But either way, hasn't been a huge help there. And Burrow, the calf thing, they get rinsed by the Titans last week. And sometimes, you go into the Lions den like that, and Vrabel can just kind of just take you down into the mud, and you never really escape. And that's certainly what was the case last week. I don't know if the Cardinals really have that in them necessarily, but Gannon's definitely done a much better job than a lot of people anticipated, and the offensive coordinator designing an offense where Josh Dobbs isn't making those mistakes like we were just talking about. So this is sort of do or die time for the Bengals. So this game has fairly split action. We were just talking about Texans Falcons. That's really close as far as where the money's coming in. It's 55% on the Texans. It's actually 54% of the money coming in on the Cardinals. So the people are either believing slightly in the Cardinals, or probably even more so just doubting the Bengals in their current form. And I tend to agree with that. I just feel like the Bengals, after a couple of years of their season ending in heartbreak, and Joe Burrow always coming into the season with some sort of medical issue one way or the other, feels like it's catching up to them a little bit.
It does. It's an especially tough time for this to happen with the T. Higgins contract kind of hanging over this team. And, it almost feels like a last dance with this core. Now, Cincinnati, as long as Burrow is there and healthy, they're going to contend for the next decade plus. I don't want to make it seem like this is their last chance, but the roster is going to be different. When you got the Burrow contract, you got the Chase contract on the books, that changes things. And, I think there's a case to be made that the way this offense specifically is constructed, this might be, the best this unit looks, depending on how they draft and depending on how they ultimately replace someone like T. Higgins or even Joe Mixon, who's probably off this team after this year as well. So it's do or die for Cincinnati, right? You can't go to 1-4. And I think they were lucky to escape that Rams game a couple of weeks ago. I actually felt good coming out of that. I thought they had created a blueprint to, kind of use a limited Joe Burrow, right? Which was just get the ball out quickly. It was like late career Big Ben, just kind of get it to Jamar Chase, let him do the work, mix in some Joe Mixon and go from there. And man, last week threw me off. And I'm still cautious with Arizona. You don't want to turn too hard in one direction. I thought this team would win like 2 games. They certainly look a lot more lively than that. To me, it's going to come down to, can Cincinnati stop the run? Like, as good as Josh Dobbs has been, I actually went and added him in like 3 fantasy leagues where I have Justin Herbert this week. I'll be rolling him out there. It's the running game for Arizona to me that's been really impressive. Like, it's not just, Josh Dobbs making plays through the air and with his legs. Like, James Conner and that offensive line have really outperformed.
Yes, they have, and the Bengals haven't been particularly stingy against the run in their own part. Derrick Henry obviously got himself going last week. Derrick Henry, different class of player than James Conner, but Conner's been really effective. Also, I like James Conner a lot, and I also like that he kind of got in a fight with the 49ers cool. Player after the game last week. And some retired NFL player quoted that clip and was like, "That fight's not about football, folks." So I like the idea of some off the field acrimony between players, and good for James Conner just kind of being a dog.
Yeah, man. More dogs, more fights. We're all for it at the RotoWire Sports Betting Pod. Let's talk Jets and Broncos, John. This is one that I think might make our Circa Million card. We're loving the Jets. And, this line has kind of been all over the place. I know it was down to Jets plus 1.5 at some books earlier this afternoon. It locked at 2 at Circa. I'm now seeing Jets plus 2.5 at the DraftKings Sportsbook. I don't think this line is done moving. Tricky game for a lot of reasons here. You have, maybe the worst quarterback in the league, but a good defense. You have Russell Wilson, who's looked pretty good, but I think we can safely say Denver has the worst defense. In fact, they have the worst defense ever through 4 weeks as far as DVOA goes back. So not a lot of ways to defend what we've seen from the Broncos on the defensive side of the ball. I like the Jets here. And I want to be clear. I'm looking right into the camera. It's not because of Zach Wilson. I don't think Zach Wilson magically discovered something midway through that game against the Chiefs. I expect him to be bad. I expect him to turn back into a pumpkin. I think this game is on the shoulders of Breece Hall, and it's on the shoulders of the Jets defense.
Yep. And, Breece Hall, this is where the injury happened last year. I think he's going to have some karmic retribution here that, they've been saying all week that they're taking the restrictor plate off of him, and he's going to be back up to full workloads. He's been dynamite with the carries he's gotten so far. You're talking about feeding Breece 15, 20 times against this Broncos defense. You got to love that. I mean, Khalil Herbert was running all over the Broncos last week. I like Khalil Herbert as much as the next guy, but come on.
Yeah, all due respect, but.
For real. So the defense is going to be able to, just really stifle things. The Broncos offense looks better than it did a year ago, but that doesn't say a whole lot necessarily. And I think facing this Jets defense, I think it's going to be real tough for them. And yeah, the Broncos defense just really has nothing going for it. And it's crazy because of how good that defense was a year ago. I guess that losing the coordinator really made a huge amount of difference there. And Sean Payton has been a bit of a bozo this year. So
big time bozo energy. Yep.
And, we get a little Hackett revenge potentially. I mean, give me the Jets, baby. Come on.
I don't know how much I buy into the Hackett factor. I just,
you should not,
I think,
for the record.
When you hire your quarterback's friend, you got to live with the consequences of that, even when your quarterback tears his Achilles. But yeah, man, I this one to me, I don't feel that great about it. I mean, being in Denver changes things. And again, I do think the Denver offense, the defense has been so bad that it's covered up the fact that Wilson has been pretty decent. The passing games looks better. Jerry Jeudy's off the injury report. That was something we were tracking closely earlier this week. Javonte Williams, though, we still don't know if he's going to play. Could be Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine this week. That would certainly be a downgrade. But we'll trust the Jets here. I'm with you. I like this one. I feel like we've been taking too many favorites. We've been kind of leaning on good teams, good quarterbacks so far at Circa. Like I want to have a bet this week that really makes my heart race.
Yes, and this should qualify, and it should be able to kind of help carry us in the afternoon window where we've kind of gotten off the schneid. We had trouble solving the afternoon slates earlier this season, but things have turned around in that regard after last week nailing both of our afternoon picks. So I think that continues this week with the Jets.
Okay, we got 3 more Sunday games, and then we'll end with Raiders-Packers Monday night. We've saved these 3 for the end for a reason. I think these are the 3 games that I am probably the least excited for. We'll start with Panthers-Lions. This number is up to 10 in favor of Detroit. It's been a steady climb, 9.5, now up to 10. Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's something that I was watching really closely. Sounds like he's aiming to play. That's how it's worded on this little website called RotoWire that does a good job tracking things like this. Hasn't really practiced all week. You do wonder. I mean, he's somebody that has pushed through injuries in the past and then has re-injured, said injury in game. So if Amon-Ra St. Brown is limited or ends up being out, I think I would lean Panthers plus 10 just because it's a big number and because I trust this Carolina defense, which has actually been pretty good. But as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, we thought going from Andy Dalton back to Bryce Young would be a downgrade. I think it was. I think Bryce Young looked okay last week, but it's been under siege. I mean, the Panthers' offensive line is not good. The Detroit defense, I'm still not convinced the Detroit defense is good, but it certainly looked good last week against Green Bay. And as you recall, John, that game was on a Thursday. So long week of rest, long week of preparation here for the Lions. You get the Panthers at home. Again, tough number with it sitting right at 10. I could kind of go either way here. Did you have a strong lean?
So my initial inclination was to go with the Lions just because I'm such a doubter of the Panthers. I think they're truly a bottom rung team with not a whole lot going for it. But the Lions are going to be one of those teams that I go back and forth on it as far as like trustworthiness, because they come out week one, they beat Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead, and then lay an egg the following week against the Seahawks, if I remember correctly. So like, are they that team that rises up when like they have the big game in front of them, like the Packers game last week, trying to like establish themselves as the new bully of the NFC North, and then they come back to earth a little bit here? I don't think that they're in any danger of losing, of course, and the spread certainly underlines that. But 10 is a lot of points to cover. That defense can be a little bit leaky at times, a little bit banged up in the secondary, so it's definitely a stay away for our purposes on Circa. And as far as the pick goes, I will stick with the Lions, but I feel less good about it than I did on Tuesday.
Yeah, I feel better about using the Lions in Survivor, using them in a straight up pick'em league than I do taking them at 10. Even 9.5, I'd feel better. But this to me feels like it could be like a 30-20 type of game, 27-17. Could be one where you end up pushing. Frank Reich, by the way, as an underdog, as a head coach, 11-26 straight up. So not a long track record of coming through in these situations. And, we know the numbers on Jared Goff playing at home, playing in a dome versus playing outside. So good spot here for the Detroit Lions. Total in this game, by the way, is 44. Titans-Colts. Man, it was between this one and Patriots-Saints as the first game that we choose. There's a reason these two were saved for last. A lot going on the Colts side of things. We have Jonathan Taylor back at practiced in full, in fact, on Thursday. Still kind of in the middle as far as where he's at. I mean, he had a very strange quote today saying like, I don't know if I'm committed, but I'm here. So it's like, okay, I don't really know what that means. But I think as of right now, we could say confidently there's at least a decent chance that Jonathan Taylor plays. I don't know if, like, whose decision this even is at this point. It seems like it might be, kind of conjunction between Taylor and the team. Frankly, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that. Jonathan Taylor's been allegedly dealing with 2 separate injuries. We don't really know what exactly he's going to look like. He's been away from the team. It's been a distraction. So it's not like I look at this game and be like, man, Jonathan Taylor plays, got to take the Colts. This is a really, really tough one. I put zero consideration into taking this one in Circa Million.
Yeah, this one is anyone's game. Obviously, that's implied in the line as well. It's very difficult to figure out. Like, I'm not going to put too much stock into what Tennessee was able to do last week against the Bengals, for instance. I think Indianapolis last week kind of let down it against the Rams. So it's really tricky. And even if Jonathan Taylor is back, in theory that provides, an additional boost for that run game. But I do feel like the Tennessee defense, for maybe its shortcomings elsewhere, can be pretty stingy against the run. So I don't know how much of a help Jonathan Taylor will be this time around. I'm going to dig into some road splits for Vrabel here in a second. But which way are you leaning here if you had to make a call?
I'm leaning Tennessee. I don't want to be overly reactionary to last week against Cincinnati. I think the Bengals are kind of a broken outfit at this point, and I don't think we could read too far into that. It took Tennessee a little bit to get going in that game. But I also think they found something in the run game. We had this exact same conversation about the Titans last year when Derrick Henry got off to a terrible start. It was held under 100 yards, was hanging around like, the mid threes in terms of yards per attempt through his first 3 games. And then, he goes for 114 against these Colts in week 4. And that started a 5-game run where he was easily clearing 100 plus yards in each of those games. They got him on track last week, 22 for 122 and a touchdown. They've been sprinkling him in, as a pass catcher, basically just on screens. And, those feel like almost a 50% hit rate as far as it turning into a big play once he gets going with a head of steam. So it depends which version of Ryan Tannehill you think is going to show up. If we get like semi-decent Ryan Tannehill, then I think Tennessee wins this game. If Ryan Tannehill throws 2 picks and loses the fumble, then the Colts hang around. So it's so these teams are just impossible to evaluate. Tennessee has shown us kind of both sides so far. Indy, we saw both sides of them just last week. You fall behind 23-0 to the Rams. You think that game's over, the hay's in the barn, and then all of a sudden the Colts come storming back and force overtime. So I lead Tennessee here. I think they're the better coach team. I think they're certainly the more experienced team. I think we've seen a lot of good with Anthony Richardson, but I also think when you go and watch every snap or you go through and watch the condensed game, you see some of the bad too. It's like if you're just watching red zone, it looks like Anthony Richardson every time he's touching the ball is like ripping off a long run, but that's not really the case. And I do think against this Tennessee defensive line, we could see the Colts have trouble. So slight lean to Tennessee, but not enough for me to play it.
So this one actually sneaky has a decent amount of line movement. So as of October 2nd, which I believe was Monday, Tennessee was a 2-point dog at DraftKings. Right now, 2.5-point favorites. So it was sticking at 1.5 for a lot this week in favor of Tennessee, but now we're seeing it at Tennessee minus 2.5. So we're looking at it in Circa where it's just 1.5. That's interesting. I'm not totally sure what to make of that, but I think bottom line, I'm a little bit more inclined to go after the Titans with that, especially with the line movement versus the lock to number.
Yeah, a couple injuries on that Colts defense as well. Shaq Leonard, he did not practice on Thursday. Kwity Paye, the defensive end, still limited as well. He's been in concussion protocols. So, not necessarily guys that swing the line, but some to keep an eye on for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, let's finish out the Sunday slate, John. We've delayed it enough. Saints-Pats, 39.5 is the total. The New Orleans Saints, 1-point favorites at Foxborough against Bill Belichick. Two key pieces missing from this New England defense. No Matthew Judon, no Christian Gonzalez, the star rookie corner. Both of those guys went out last week against Dallas. I don't know where to go here. I mean, both of these teams have just been terrible on offense. I think both of them on paper have good defenses. I think New England, for the most part lived up to that, but missing Judon and Gonzalez, those are huge pieces to be without. I believe has either team reached 20 points yet this year? I don't think they have, or they've not gone over 20 points. New England has not been able to run the ball whatsoever. There's not a lot of positive momentum on either side. And Derek Carr, I think should probably look better than he did last week, but my guess is that he's still well below 100%.
Right. That a AC joint sprain in your throwing shoulder, that explains why Alvin Kamara got 13 targets last week. Like, he's definitely not confident throwing it down the field, letting plays develop and get it, and putting himself in harm's way. So even with those injuries that New England has, of which there are many, those are just the recent ones with Judon and Christian Gonzalez. They've got other ones that occurred earlier in the year that are just tough. And it's taking away what could have been like a pretty fearful defense. But I will take, and I think the Patriots' mystique is effectively gone. That's worn off. But I still feel like them at home, especially as a slight underdog against a team that I don't view to be very good whatsoever. I think that they're just like a very milquetoast, like 20th best team in the league type of deal. The Saints are. So I'm just going to take the home side here and not worry too much about anything else. And Mac Jones definitely needs to get his confidence back. Maybe he'll be able to do so against the secondary.
Significant line movement in this game as well. Like we mentioned, it's now Saints -1. Sunday night when we kind of got the official look ahead line, it was Patriots -1.5. So pretty big swing in favor of the Saints. New England, by the way, 2-9 ATS in its last 11 games overall. And another good note from the Action Network, the under has cashed in 10 straight Saints games in 13 of the last 14. You're never going to feel great about going under on a number in the 30s, but I think for me, that's the play.
Yeah, I think we see that this one scores in the teens for both of them. This might be as bad as 14-13.
I think we could see Bailey Zappi. That's all I'm going to say, and maybe we'll even see Jameis Winston. We could have a Winston Zappi second half on our hands.
Now that would make the game worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, I would much rather watch that. No question about it. This entire pod has led up to this Monday Night Football, Packers Raiders. Packers right now. This line's all over the place. I gotta switch books just to kind of get a gauge here. Raiders 1-point home favorites. This thing has been moving throughout the last couple of days. I know the Packers were favored by as much as 2.5 within the last 24 hours. So we've seen a pretty dramatic swing back toward the Raiders. this is a really, really difficult game. Two, in some ways, evenly matched teams, two very different teams. I think the Packers are more talented, but at the same time, I think they got exposed in a number of ways last week against Detroit. So, the Raiders feel like they're catching Green Bay at a good time. With that said, Green Bay, extra time to prepare. This game is out in Vegas, but Green Bay last played on Thursday. Devontae Adams did not practice on Thursday. He's nursing that shoulder injury. Jimmy G was limited on Thursday due to a concussion. I think he's at this point in the final stages of protocols. Like, my guess is Garoppolo is going to end up being cleared. That's a good thing for the Raiders, but I actually thought Aiden O'Connell looked okay. And, Garoppolo, for the most part, has kind of lived up to about who you'd expect him to be. But that doesn't really sway my opinion too much here. I think I like the Packers. Extra time to prepare. Last week felt like a worst case scenario first half. I actually thought they did okay to battle back in the second half. And, if Quay Walker doesn't, for some reason, decide to jump over the line.
Dude, what is his deal?
That was weird, man.
All he does is create crippling injury or crippling penalties for the Packers.
He's had 3 or 4 of those over the last 2 years now. It's been strange.
I think playing the Lions must do it to him because he did it in Week 18 last year too.
That's right. Green Bay wasn't going to win that game, but it was going to get somewhat interesting if that didn't happen. And obviously the Lions were able to kind of milk it and run things out after that. But Green Bay can't look any worse than it did in the first half. I think they'll be fired up to avenge that. And I think this Raiders defense is really exploitable. So you can say the same thing about the Packers defense, but with the extra time to get guys back, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, they were active last week. They weren't really used as if they were 100% available. I think we should see Jair Alexander back in the mix for Green Bay as well. Haven't gotten much of an update on him, but my expectation is that he'll be back. So I think Green Bay wins an ugly game, probably a pretty sloppy game on both sides, probably a lot of 3 and outs. But I'll take Green Bay, something like 21-17.
I like the Packers here as well, especially as a slight underdog. I'm just gonna be betting against the Raiders until further notice. Even with Jimmy G being back in the mix, we expect. Beyond Devontae Adams, like if they don't have Devontae Adams out there, if he's limited, where do they go with the ball on offense? Is it going to be the Josh Jacobs show? He obviously looks a cut or two below what he was last season, and the Raiders defense is bad. So I think that, Jordan Love, very polarizing player thus far. And with good reason, his play has been polarizing. But his good looks pretty good to me. And I think we see the good show up on Monday night. He's going to make some big plays, I think, down the field. And all of a sudden, we have the Packers in business. And, if Aaron Jones is anything close to 100%, then, that's just icing on the cake for me.
Let's do some quick Survivor talk. We will hand out the parlays, the teaser of the week, give our best bets, and be on our way here. 2 obvious teams this week. You got Miami at home against the Giants. That number's up to 12. You got the Lions as 10-point favorites against the Panthers. Chances are you have one of those teams available. That is certainly where I would advise leaning. If you want to go a little off script, though, are there any other spots that you would consider?
Excellent question. And a little bit of game theory when it comes to using the 2 big favorites this week. Bear in mind that Detroit gets Carolina this week. Miami gets them next week. So I think my move where I have both teams available is to go Detroit this week against the Panthers and then come back and pick on the Panthers next week in the form of using the Dolphins. Ravens, obviously I'm very strong on them this week, but I can't quite get there as far as like a sneaky survivor type of deal. I think Buffalo definitely makes some sense in their own right going up against Jacksonville. But I think there's probably a decent chance that you've used them at this point, whether it was against the Raiders or the Commanders. So not a whole lot of deep cuts that we're looking at for this week. If you wanted to be a little bit wild with it, I think honestly San Francisco, but I think you save San Francisco for a different week just in case.
Yeah, that would be a sicko pick for me. I get it, but yeah, I think you want to save the Niners in that spot. I don't really love anything else. You mentioned the Bills. I mean, obviously the game starts in 2 hours, but if you're listening live, like maybe consider the Commanders against the Bears. I think the Bears are one of, you mentioned kind of targeting Carolina, targeting teams like Denver, the Giants, like the Bears are in that category. So if you didn't burn the Commanders week 1 against the Cardinals, maybe this is a spot to do that. But yeah, stick with Detroit, stick with Miami. Chances are you'll be safe there. John, give me your parlay of the week.
All right, so we got 3 legs, and apologies to everyone for last week. No leg to stand on from that one. I went 0 for 3 on that one, but we wiped the slate clean. Here's what we got for this week. We got the Ravens -4. We got the Bills -5.5. We got the Jets +1.5. That pays out about 6-1. That's my parlay of the week.
I like it a lot. I'm taking the Bills to cover, so I'm with you there. I'm taking the Dolphins to cover. And we're taking the 49ers to cover that 3.5 at home against Dallas. That gets you to +595. I believe, John, by the way, we were one leg away from the Four Loco Insanity parlay cashing last week, and the Broncos pushed. So, kind of depends on how your book handles that. If you were able to jump on the Insanity parlay, Vikings, Chargers, both covered. And I believe that number closed at 3 for Denver. Wait, no, they were 3-point favorites. That's right. So, yeah, I guess I would have pushed. But nonetheless, on an Insanity Four Local parlay, we will take a push there. All right, I will give you my teaser of the week, and then we'll lock things up. We're running back a 7-point teaser here, and we got 3 teams involved. We are going to tease the Kansas City Chiefs from -3.5 to +3.5 on the road at Minnesota. We are going to tease the LA Rams from +4 up to +11, and we are going to tease the Green Bay Packers from +1 up to +8. Hit all 3 of those. That gets you +130.
Okay. All right. I see. I'm picking up what you're putting down there. I think that those are all, I think you're definitely sharp with the way in which you use those 7 points to play around with. And I think you got all those numbers down to something that I think it becomes very actionable. Getting in at plus money, all the better. So, I'm in on your teaser, sir.
All right. Hopefully the teams cooperate and they're in on it as well. Let's give me your best bet, and we will get out of here, John.
It's the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to go to Pittsburgh in a Hans Field, get it done. Covering 4 points. I know it's no Joe Flacco out there, but Lamar, he's got it cooking. Give me the Ravens. It's a huge weekend in Maryland sports. We got the Terps less than 3 touchdown dogs against Ohio State. Right in Columbus. We got the O's starting off their ALDS series against the Rangers. We got a scene on Sunday where the Ravens play at 1, and then that game ends, and then the Orioles play at 4. So I'm going to be in hog heaven on Sunday afternoon. Can't wait. Give me the Ravens.
All right, we love it. Ravens -4. I'm going Miami. It's up to 12. It's moved during the podcast. It's now up to 12.
Let's go.
I'm taking it. It could be Miami -25. I'm taking it.
Keep going.
Give me more points. I don't care. I think the Bills would be my true heart of hearts best bet. I'm just hedging like hell against the Jaguars, but this is just too good of a spot for Miami. It's honestly my biggest concern is that it's too good, and I'm just completely ignoring something that I should be seeing. But no, Miami's winning this game. They're winning it big. It really, more than anything, it's a makeup from I remember on the show at the last second I backed out. I was going to make Miami. I think it was 6.5. My best bet when they played Denver. And I was like, I don't know. That Denver team, we'll see. I think that defense is going to come around. And they won the game by 50. So Miami, I apologize for that. I never should have backed off of that one. I feel like a fool, but we're making up for it this week. So you are locking in Ravens -4. I'm locking in Dolphins -12. John, I have to get to a wedding rehearsal in about 35 minutes here. So we got to end this thing, but we appreciate everybody watching along live, everybody throwing questions in the stream. We're always happy to answer your betting or fantasy football questions as much as we can during the show. Check out the podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. It's archived on YouTube as well. We will talk to you next week. Best of luck.